Uprising, revolution, protests, revolts. The continent of Asia is not new to them. In fact, for centuries, people's movements have shaped political and social order in countries across the region. On Saturday, Sri Lanka witnessed an unprecedented uprising. Thousands of protesters, seething with anger, gathered outside the presidential secretariat, pushed away all the barriers, and stormed the most fortified building in Colombo, the presidential secretariat, forcing the president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to flee. And they have refused to budge unless the president resigns. The current chaos in Sri Lanka brings back flashes from another Asian country that witnessed similar scenes. A sustained campaign of civil resistance in the Philippines forced Ferdinand Marcos to depart, ending his 20-year-long dictatorship. Hundreds had amassed in Manila, only 100 meters away from the Malacanang Palace. Ferdinand Marcos then fled, and just like current-day Colombo, demonstrators stormed the palace, which was closed to the ordinary people for around a decade. The protesters wandered inside the palace, looting and destroying items of extravagance. Today, 36 years later, Ferdinand Marcos' family is back in power with his son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., as the president. The power of the people became a potent political force when it led to the ouster of Ferdinand Marcos. Experts say the Philippines' protests inspired many more democracy movements around the world. In 1988, Burmese mobilized against the junta. Though the movement was quelled, it did not stop the opposition from clinching an electoral victory 2 years later. The junta, however, prevailed by dismissing the result, a repeat of which was also seen in Myanmar last year. Indonesia witnessed people's uprising in 1998 when thousands of young protesters took to the streets and successfully forced the President Suharto to step down. Indonesia back then was reeling from the fallout of the 1997 Asian financial crisis. The 2015 protests in Malaysia started as an election reform crusade and grew to become a national movement for democracy. In 2019, angry protesters laid siege to Hong Kong's Legislative Council as the city marked the anniversary of its handover to China. They were calling for the pro-Beijing leader to step down and reverse years of sliding freedom. The fight by pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong is still on, but China has tightened its crackdown, silencing several voices calling for freedom. In 2020, protesters stormed the Kyrgyz parliament after days of unrest over the election results. They ransacked the building, punched the president's portraits, and looted whatever they could, luxury and non-luxury items. Protesters seized the seat of government and freed his predecessor from jail. Stun grenades, water cannons, tear gas failed to contain the public dissent. These tales of uprising and their outcomes could be a lesson for Sri Lanka today. If the Sri Lankan president resigns, what's next for the people of the crisis-hit country? Can the people's movement lead towards more structural reforms? WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.